prayer, for example, I think it's very important to not just be asking some far-off deity for help. I mean, that's really not going to get you anywhere. The use of prayer is maybe to organize your own ideas, your own thoughts, your own aims, even something a little further of, if you want to use specific gods, for example, maybe even invoking a god. Even that many people see as not necessarily bringing an external entity into yourself, but as tapping into an aspect of your own consciousness that wasn't in front of your eyes before, it was hidden in the background somewhere. And so by invoking Mars in order to give myself, or to make myself win a football game, sort of gets my own consciousness in that warlike, I'm going to do this, I'm going to conquer, I'm going to, you know?
Yeah, because our subconscious thinks in symbols, and it doesn't.
Absolutely,
literally,
and that's the point.
That's how we dialogue with it. Yeah.
And it's about using these symbols to improve your life, better yourself, hopefully find what your true purpose is and work with that to try and create that union between you and the higher consciousness, however you want to word that. No. I think that's the important part. In fact, that gets right on to what I was just about to go into here. The lesson that the symbols are the important thing, especially when it comes to the secret rites of initiation and stuff like that. There are very important symbols that are given to you in those rituals, and that's why they're kept secret. Not, in my opinion, that's why they're kept secret. Not necessarily because, you know, we're like, oh, you can't see this is only for us. It doesn't work like that. It's like, if I were to know what the ritual was going to be before I go into it, it wouldn't have nearly as much impact on me, especially on my psychology.
You make assumptions on what...
Exactly.
Yeah, and judgments against whatever's going to happen.
Whereas if you're brought into it and you're like, whoa, like, you throw, there's a guy in a robe and candles and putting a sword across my chest, and, you know, like, it makes you think about what those things actually mean.
And there's also a break too,
as they come to you. Sorry.
With a lot of people with symbols and what they represent, there's those that believe that the symbol itself has a magical power, whereas others believe that the symbol it's in your intent and what it makes you feel, and what its intention, how it affects you personally.
So what it provokes from you.
What it evokes from within.
Yeah, and that's a use of sigils, for example. Yes. It can be, you can use a certain seal or something like that in a magical ritual because it's been used since ancient Rome, ancient Sumeria, and it has
and it only has
a built-in
purpose,
it has a built-in egregore is actually the right word. It's like a focal point for many different people's thoughts over years and years, generations, what have you. And so it's useful to us today, even subconsciously. It's bringing out things that we have sort of stored in us from past generations. But many people, like chaos magicians, for example, will create their own sigils.
Yes.
And what that basically is exactly like you just said, focusing your own thoughts on a specific symbol, creating your own symbol, which is just as much merit and is just as effective. In fact, can almost be more effective than using ancient seals and ancient symbols, because you may not have a reference point, you may not understand what the meaning of that symbol is, whereas if you create your own, you have a complete understanding of what it means.
We may have a symbol with a lot of people that invoke some fairly negative images because of how we've been culturally raised, but have a lot of baggage with them.
That's true. Yeah.
So they may not work with you in the way they're actually intended.
Yeah, it's true. Like, I mean, a lot of people, especially in sort of like a pagan community, would have aversion to, say, a Christian symbology, so it wouldn't have the same intended effects that, you know, it would have the adverse effects.
Exactly.
There we go. Okay. So I think when Royce and Crowley reworked the O.T.O system, they had exactly that in mind. I think both of them coming from a pseudo-Masonic background, they sort of felt that Freemasonry had become, especially at the turn of the 20th century, very sort of watered down. They were too focused on politics and things like that, rather than actually transmitting the mysteries, which was supposed to be the aim of Freemasonry in the beginning. In fact, one of my favorite essays by Crowley is in this book as well, which is titled "What is Freemasonry?" And I'm going to kind of sort of finish my talk with his opinion of what he sees Freemasonry as and what he wanted the O.T.O to be in the first place. I propose to define Freemasonry as a system of communicating truth, religious, philosophical, magical, and mystical, and indicating the proper means of developing human faculty by means of a particular language whose alphabet is symbolism and ritual. Universal brotherhood and the greater moral principles, independent of personal, racial, climatic, and other prejudices, naturally formed a background which would assure individual security and social stability for each and all. The main object of the instruction were two. It was firstly necessary to explain the universe and the relation of human life therewith. Secondly, to instruct every man how best to adapt his life to the cosmos and to develop his faculties to the utmost advantage. I accordingly constructed a series of rituals: Minerval, man, magician, master magician, perfect initiate, which would illustrate the course of human life in its largest philosophical aspect. I begin by showing the object of the pure soul, one, individual, and eternal, in determining to formulate itself consciously, or as I may say, to understand itself. I claim for my system that it satisfies all possible requirements of true Freemasonry. It offers a rational basis for universal brotherhood and for universal religion. It puts forward a scientific statement, which is a summary of all that is present known about the universe by means of a simple yet sublime symbolism, artistically arranged. It also enables each man to discover for himself his personal destiny, indicates the moral and intellectual qualities which he requires in order to fulfill it freely, and finally puts in his hands an unimaginably powerful weapon which he may use to develop in himself every faculty which he may need in his work. I believe that my proposals for reconstituting Freemasonry on the lines above laid down should prove critically important. Civilization is crumbling under our eyes, and I believe the best chance of saving what little is worth saving and rebuilding the temple of the Holy Ghost on plans and with material and workmanship, which shall be free from all errors of the former, lies with the O.T.O. Love is the law, love under will.
So when did Crowley write that, Civilization is Crumbling?
This essay, I'm not entirely sure. This book was published in the 80s, as I say.
Yeah.
It doesn't really say when each of the individual sections of it were published, but it obviously, I believe something like that would have been probably around the 1920s when Crowley basically took charge of the O.T.O and decided to rearrange the system. So I would imagine it would be around that time.
That's interesting, because they still said that civilization was crumbling in the 20s. They hadn't been through the worst of things.
They just got through the First World War.
Well, they were in the middle of the
Second,
wars,
yeah,
and
exactly.
you know, things were pretty rough for Western civilization at the time, so I could see how he would view things that way at the time, especially. Feel free to come in.
Every age believes that its civilization is crumbling in some aspect or another.
Yeah, that's partially true. I think today we see it that way too, especially with, I mean, I know it's kind of over now, not really, but the Iraq War and stuff, especially with Bush's whole situation, a lot of people began to speak out against American culture. And I think a lot of us have a discomfort with the way society is going. I mean, there are a lot of people who are fine pulling the sheets over their eyes and saying, oh, well, would you rather live in Serbia?
Yes.
Like, you know, we got it great here. Well, yeah, that's good. We're better than the Serbians, but it doesn't.
We're not as good as we could be.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's not perfect. And as long as we're constantly perfecting ourselves, hopefully our society will become better. You can't expect other people to do it for you, as I've said.
Well, there's a lot of people that try to use magic to basically hide from themselves.
And it can be used as a form of
yeah.
escapism.
Exactly.
I mean, escapism is the problem, I think.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with escaping your daily life for an hour or something like that.
Yeah,
We were just talking about video games in the last lecture here. And it's fine, you want to play a video game for 20 minutes, that's great, but if you're playing it for 8 hours, it might be
Yes.
against
It's
your
becomes an
progress.
addiction in a way.
Yeah.
It's destructive, self-destructive.
And that can be for all addictions.
Yes.
Booze, drugs, whatever, you know.
Whatever it is you choose to.
It's a form of escapism. It's one thing to do it for recreation, it's another thing to get away from your problems. In Thelema, we like to focus on confronting your problems head on. Study them. Why do I feel this way? Why is this bothering me? Why do I hate my job? Why does my girlfriend bitch at me all the time? Why, you know, like,
Why do I keep making the same mistakes over and over?
and you can easily blame your boss or blame your girlfriend or blame
That's the easy way.
beer, but really it's your fault. It's your problem. It's about you. It's not about anyone else. It's your choices. It's how you deal with it. It's how you go about correcting it. And there are